Good afternoon, Jimmy here in Chicago. Hope everybody's having a nice weekend. It's August and it's time for another rat of the month. That's right. I'm going to expose another government informant. Probably take a little heat from this video, but we'll see what happens. If any of my videos upset anybody, just let me know. One push of a button and I delete it. Now we got a lot going on in Chicago this weekend. We've got the baseball playoffs are coming up. Go Cubbies. We've got preseason football. We've got the Air and Water Show. And today is the last day of the Taylor Street Fest. I went every day since Thursday. It's a lot of fun. Good food. Beautiful women. Excellent entertainment. And tonight I think they're going to have a DJ. So if you're not doing nothing, grab the family, grab the kids, grab the old lady, and take her down to the Little Italy Fest. Actually ran into a few people that watch my show. Bob, I wanted to thank you for stopping by and introducing yourself and send me that picture that we took at Pompeii. If you guys like my Chicago mob trial stories, hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. I appreciate all the supports. Now let's get into it. My rat of the month is this guy here, Jerry Scarpelli. Born and raised on the west side of Chicago, and he was the son of a baker. And in Chicago, we got some of the best bakeries in the country: Diamato's, Toronto, Ganella, Luca. Now you can see Jerry was a handsome guy. He took care of himself. He was an avid weightlifter and worked out quite a bit. Jerry was a member of the Wild Bunch, the notorious Wild Bunch crew. You got Harry Elman, leader of the crew, Scarpelli in the middle. You got Jimmy I on the bottom, two victims of the Chicago outfit. You got Tony Borsellino, who was a partner with Scarpelli, another partner, victim of Chicago outfit. You had Butchie, and you had Scalise. Harry Elman sadly died in prison thanks to that low-life, corrupt lawyer, cokehead, degenerate gambler Bob Cooley. He wore a wire and testified that he was the one that bribed the judge $10,000 to fix the Harry Elman case. I went to the second trial right there at the Cook County Court Building on 26th in California, and I will never, ever, ever forget seeing Harry Elman in the courtroom. Now, in the middle, you got Scarpelli. Some people think he committed suicide. Some people think he was murdered. We're going to get into that. He's the star of the show today. And then on the right, the late Jimmy I, Mikey Switek, the guy from Pompeii, used to tell me all kinds of unbelievable stories about Jimmy I. And then you got Tony Borsellino, Butch Petroselli, both of them killed by the Chicago outfit. And the last of the Mohicans, the last one living today in his 80s, you got Scalise. And I hope and pray I can get Scalise to come on one day, and I'd love to sit down and have a cup of coffee with him. But these are some of the heavyweights in the Taylor Street crew. Now, aside from hijackings, residential commercial burglaries, scores, Jerry's MO, what he got off on, what he really liked to do, was rob armored cars. They would do around 6 scores a year. And one of them, I forget the dollar amount, but I think it was like over $300,000. Some of that money had to be kicked up to Joe Ferriola, who was the boss at the time. And Butch Petroselli lied to Joe Ferriola about the amount of money that they stole. And that was the start of Butchie's demise that we'll get into. Scarpelli also, like a lot of the Taylor Street guys and Grand Avenue guys, are really good burglars and thieves. These guys could peel any safe, bypass any alarm, pick any lock. They had all the tools, they had all the disguises, they had experience. These guys learned from master thieves themselves. But I got to be careful because my good friend reminds me, she's like, Jimmy, you're always saying these guys are the best burglars in the business, but they all fucking get caught. It's the guys that don't get caught. It's the guys yet that you don't hear of. Those are the best in the business. But Scarpelli, no doubt, would pull off residential, commercial burglars, just like any other good outfit guy. Now, Scarpelli probably had over 18 arrests. He did a combined probably close to 15 years in prison. Scarpelli was also known as one of the best wheelmen in the Chicago outfit. They had a lot of good wheelmen. You had guys like John Feccarata, Little Jimmy, Ronnie Jarrett. Another guy I'm not going to mention his name is Scarpelli. A wheelman is very trusted by the boss of the Chicago outfit. And some of these guys would modify the work cars and has saved the crews many times from getting pinched if it wasn't for their great driving skills. But Scarpelli was very proud of the fact and passionate on what a good wheelman he was. Now, Scarpelli had a little vision. You know, he wanted to go legit one day. I think he wanted to open up maybe a couple boutiques, a couple cafes. He was in the junkyard, scrap yard business for a little bit. But him being a convicted felon, that always came back to haunt him. And this is another show I'm going to do. This is one of many scams that the Chicago outfit made millions of dollars that you never hear about. Is the junkyard scrap business. And that'll lead into the chop shop wars. We're going to talk about that. Now, Scarpelli had a lot of partners, a lot of guys he was close with. And one of his closest partners, guy he did a lot of scores, a lot of hits with, was Scalise. And I would love to ask Scalise who he think killed Tony Borsellino. Or ask Scalise, did Scarpelli commit suicide? Or do you think was murdered? But Scalise is still alive. He's in his 80s. He's done a recent interview with Joey Merlino. Guys, check it out. As I mentioned, Scarpelli reported to the boss of the Taylor Street crew, Harry Ellman. Harry Ellman was a legend, not only in the Chicago outfit, but a legend in the Taylor Street neighborhood. I love hearing stories of some of the younger guys that grew up with Harry and what he was like. For example, Skippy. He would visit Harry Ellman in prison 2 times a year for 30 years. He would actually smuggle in food, contraband, into the prison. And as long as they tipped off the guards had no problem with the wise guys getting all the good food smuggled in. Recently, one of my friends told me a story that when Harry got acquitted of the murder of Bill Logan, they threw a major celebration, major party in the Taylor Street neighborhood, and that was really pissing off some of the federal agents. Kind of reminds me of when Gotti got acquitted, he would do the same thing, throw major parties on Mulberry Street. Now, Scarpelli, Harry, Butch Petroselli, Jimmy I, Scalise, the Taylor Street guys, their MO was ski masks and shotguns, New York style. They blast you away like they did to Dick Kane or the Daubers or Mad Sam DeStefano. They would blast you away wearing ski masks and shotguns. Broad daylight, sometimes even leaving witnesses. Bold, in your face Cosa Nostra. That was the Taylor Street's MO. Now, Scarpelli wasn't just a burglar, wasn't just a thief or a guy that got off on robbing armored cars and banks. He also did a lot of heavy work. Allegedly, he participated in over 15 murders of the Chicago outfit. And one of his very first murders was a guy named Rich Fierro. Two masked gunmen ambushed him, shotgun blast, and killing him. I think this was in 1977. 2 weeks later, an associate of Fierro was shot and killed. Then he had the 1977 murder of Mark Thesaurus, a scrap junkyard owner. You had the murder of Richard Crofton, a caterer. He had beef with another mobbed up catering company, and a few people got killed. Scarpelli was the prime suspect. I think there was even a husband and wife that were either killed or there was an attempt on their lives. And I'll do another story on the catering business, another scam, another cash cow for the Chicago outfit. So 1977, there was a lot of murders that year in the mid to late 70s. So you just look at the Chicago outfit's leadership at that time. You had Joe Nagel, you had Ayupa. These guys led with an iron fist. Another murder Scarpelli allegedly committed, 1979. He murdered a Greek guy, a nightclub owner, a guy that owned a company called Roadhouse, Christophilus. He was shot and killed. Same thing, ski mask, shotgun, ambushed, left to die. Scarpelli was also contacted by El Taco, boss of Chicago Heights crew. Taco wanted Scarpelli to participate in some of the chop shop wars, some of those murders. That was kind of like the Colombo murders in New York. Nonstop. People were dropping like flies. As I mentioned before, Scarpelli participated in the murder of Billy and Charlotte Dauber. Now, this guy was no saint. He killed people himself. He was about to testify to the grand jury. I think he was an associate of the Chicago Heights crew. And Dauber and his wife were coming out of a Kane County courthouse building one day. And this is a hit where you had the Chinatown crew, the 26th Street crew, and the Taylor Street crew worked together. You had Frankie Calabrese, Ronnie Jarrett. They put a tail. They followed the Daubers when they were coming out of the court building. And then the work car, you had Butch Petroselli, Scarpelli, and another guy. Ronnie Jarrett and Frankie Calabrese rode them off the road, pinned the Daubers. There's their car right there. You can see it smashed. And then Butch Petroselli opened up with his shotgun multiple times, killing Billy Dauber and his wife. Butchie held the shotgun to Scarpelli and ordered him out of the car. Scarpelli, without any hesitation, walked up to Billy Dauber, a few inches from his head, shot him and his wife twice in the head, finishing him off. That was a brutal murder that was discussed at the Family Secrets trial, the murder of the Dauber brothers. And it was ironically where legendary reporter John Bulldog Drummond happened to be at a cafe just blocks down from where Billy Dauber was killed. But this was two of the several murders that Scarpelli participated in. You also had this guy here, another victim of the Chicago outfit. I think this was Michael Oliver. Shot and killed, unsolved. Butch Petroselli. Now, this was a partner, a friend of Scarpelli. And they had a fallout after that armored car heist. Scarpelli, or Butch Petroselli, lied to Joe Ferriola about the amount of money. And he was also dropping names. Butch Petroselli was going around throwing Joe Ferraiola's name around. That's a big no-no. When Harry went to prison, some of the money was missing. That was supposed to go to Harry and his family and his crew. They blamed Butchie. Scarpelli, Frankie Calabrese, and others. Butch Petroselli was lured to a warehouse, a club. I thought it was in Bridgeport, but I think it was in Cicero. He was lured to the club. Angelo Petri told Nick Calabrese to go take out the garbage. He told Scarpelli he's not coming back. When Butch Petroselli walked into the room, he was jumped, attacked, and brutally killed, beat, stomped, strangled. Frank Calabrese took great pride in killing Butch Petroselli because he hated him. A lot of guys didn't like Butchie. And then Frank Calabrese slit Butch Petroselli's throat from ear to ear, giving him the Calabrese necktie. But Scarpelli participated in the murder of Butch Petroselli. Same thing. Some of those burglars that were rounded up, whether they participated in the break-in of Tony Accardo's house or not, were rounded up, brutally tortured, and killed. Scarpelli allegedly was part of the hit team that killed some of those guys. Same thing with this guy. I'm going to call him Dinger, Ding Dong. Gerald Carlisi, Caricello. I remember the late, great Charluch, a bartender, told me great stories how he would go up and down Taylor Street saying he had the biggest dick. So they gave him the nickname Dinger, Ding Dong. This guy was a bad drunk. He was also one of IUPA's drivers. Well, him and Scarpelli participated in killing and torturing some of these burglars. So to tie up all loose ends, Scarpelli is the prime suspect in the murder of Dinger. And another unsolved murder of the Chicago outfit, Tony Borsellino. Jerry Scarpelli is the prime suspect in the murder of Tony Borsellino. Borsellino trusted Scarpelli, and it makes sense that he would have gotten in the car with him. But we'll never know. What do you guys think? You think Scarpelli participated in all these murders? And there's other murders of that Scarpelli participated in. A guy named Michael O'Brien. Another guy that was in the chop shop business. And several others I'm forgetting to mention. So Scarpelli put in a lot of work, right? Now, fast forward. Scarpelli and another partner of his, James Duke Basil, not sure how to pronounce the name, Basile, Baselli. They were doing a lot of scores. And for 2 years, they were under investigation. Scarpelli's partner, James Duke, was actually wearing a wire. So imagine the damage a government informant can do in 2 years, right? All the taped conversations, all the scores. So every score they did, the FBI was right behind them. Eventually, Scarpelli was on another score in Michigan City, which is a stone throw away from downtown Chicago, Michigan City, Indiana. He was doing a score. He got pinched. They started talking to him. At first, Scarpelli had nothing to say to him. Stand-up guy, heavyweight, Chicago outfit guy, tough guy. Did several years in prison. He had nothing to say. Slept on it. They played the tapes of him and Jimmy Baselli talking about crimes, talking about murders, and they basically had him. That was it. He changed his mind May 2nd, 1989. He decided to cooperate. He became a rep. He told the government about most of the murders he participated in. He talked about a mob cemetery not too far from Scalise's house, where several bodies were found. He admitted to killing Tony Borsellino, Butch Petrocelli, the Daubers, O'Brien, and the rest of them. However, he even offered to wear a wire. However, he had a change of heart. And federal judge Milton Shador, who I actually seen at the Dirksen Federal Building during a few trials, there was a ruling, a hearing that did not go Scarpelli's way. Let's go to 1989, May 2nd, 1989. 2 days after that hearing, Scarpelli was in the shower stall at the notorious MCC prison. This is the federal prison downtown Chicago, right there by the Chicago Board of Trade, not too far from 290. And this is where all the wise guys are held during their trial. This place is one of the nastiest holding federal prisons in the country, right up there next to that one in Brooklyn where P. Diddy's at. But here you had men like Joaquin Felice, Sully D, the entire Carlisi crew was locked up here. Gus Alex was locked up here along with Nick Gio. Frankie Calabrese Sr. almost had a heart attack in here when he was going over his case with Joe Lopez, an old friend of mine, big-time drug dealer back in the day, John Kappas, was locked up here. Frankie Schweiss, Scarpelli. I mean, the list goes on and on. My friend Paulie was locked up here. Coco Cavone spent time here. And some of the kids that I hang out with, what they would do, their moms, their aunts would cook all this Italian food, give it to the kids, and the kids would bribe the guards with food and smuggle in food to their wise guy uncles, grandfathers, and fathers. So imagine that, having your kid sneak in delicious Italian food, contraband, to your father, uncle, or loved one while they're locked up. That's a true story. But that particular day, Scarpelli, I can't imagine what was going through his mind because he was a proud guy. He had a family. He killed himself. Basically pulled a Jeffrey Epstein. Now, some people question it because at the same time, Chicago outfit killer, notorious killer, Frankie Schweiss, they called this guy Hitler. He was a defendant at the family secret trial, but he was too sick to stand trial. I can't even imagine what it would have been like to see Frankie Schweiss sitting in court 3 feet away from Frank Calabrese, Jimmy Marcello, Joe Lombardo. Imagine seeing these men in court. But Frankie Schweiss was on the same floor at the same time Scarpelli allegedly killed himself. What do you guys think? This guy was so scared, other mob guys told their families, if you see this man, call 911. That's what Michael Spilotro told his wife. If you ever see this guy, immediately call 911. That's how dangerous he was. But what do you guys think? At first, I thought Frankie Schweiss probably did kill him. It's just too much of a coincidence. But after thinking about it, Frankie Schweiss was an older man at the time. He had a lot of health issues, right? And Scarpelli, as I said before, was a beast. I mean, this guy was a power lifter. He was in great shape. Just look at him. Looks like a football player. So I think Scarpelli would have had no problem handling Frankie Schweiss. So to me, it makes sense that Scarpelli probably did kill himself, sadly. But it's sad, the sad life of a government informant, right? Some of these guys get killed. Some of these guys, nothing happens to them. The average salary right now for a government informant is $80,000 to $90,000. They get protection, they get free location, they get benefits, medical, dental, new identity. 80, 90,000 a year. Some of these guys commit suicide. It's not unheard of, right? That someone commits suicide in prison. At first, I thought Epstein did commit suicide. But after I seen the video and I watched it over and over and over, there's a guy in an orange jumpsuit that you could clearly see the orange jumpsuit of somebody walking up the steps towards Epstein's cell. And the guards and the warden at that prison cannot explain it. So now I'm starting to believe that, yeah, Epstein was killed. But back to Scarpelli. What do you guys think? I want to know. Enter in the comments. Do you think he was killed or do you think he committed suicide? But we'll do a small recap here. If you guys like my Chicago mock trial stories, hit the like button, subscribe. My rat of the month in August, Gerald Jerry Scarpelli, burglar, thief, Chicago outfit killer, part of the old Wild Bunch crew. Used to love to rob armored cars, banks. Scarpelli, though, wasn't a real earner. Probably made maybe about $1 million, but never really invested it properly and just kind of lived score to score, if you will. You had some guys that did heavy work, some guys that were earners. Scarpelli was more of a guy that did heavy work. Obviously, killed over a dozen people. Not that big of an earner. As we mentioned, professional burglar, thief. Did probably 18, 20 arrests. Spent around 15 years in prison. He's a bodybuilder. He's in great shape. A wheelman. One of the best getaway drivers in the outfit. As I mentioned, the junkyard, the scrap business, cash cow for Chicago outfit. One of his partners, one of his good friends was Scalise, who is still alive today. He used to work for Harry Allman. Their MO, ski masks and shotguns. These are the guys, some of the guys that he murdered. Scarpelli allegedly murdered Richie Fierro, 1997, then Frank Theo, then Mark Thanasaris, Richard Crofton, Christophilus. He participated in some of the chop shop murders. He participated in the torture and murder of the guys that broke into Tony Accardo's home. He participated in the murder of Butch Petroselli, his friend. He shotgun blasted Billy Dauber and his wife. Participated in the murder of his friend, Tony Borsellino. Can't even imagine what that was like. There's O'Brien, victim of the chop shop wars, mugshot of Scarpelli. I mean, look at those eyes. Look at how cold that guy is. That's like July 1972. Participated in the murders of the Daubers, killed his good friend Butch Petroselli. Butchie threw a party, Christmas party, with all kinds of women. And that was the last straw. Chicago outfit bosses decided he had to finally go. Scarpelli participated in the murders and torture of the burglars that robbed Tony Accardo's house. Ding Dong, right? Dinger. This was Iupa's driver, Carlisi. I'm not sure to pronounce the name. Scarpelli and him killed a lot of those burglars. So to tie up loose ends, Iupa, Ferriola, Carlisi were not fucking around. They had Dinger killed. Same thing with Tony Borsellino. Scarpelli was the prime suspect. As I mentioned before, Tony Borsellino trusted Scarpelli. And if you believe that low-life, corrupt lawyer Bob Cooley, he was about to have a steak dinner at Eli's Steakhouse right there in Chicago and Michigan. He got a call. Tony Borsellino said he had to leave. That was the last time he was seen alive. Fast forward, Scarpelli and James Duke were doing a lot of scores together, but Scarpelli had no idea that his good friend and partner in crime was a government informant wearing a wire, and they had him under investigation for 2 years. Finally pinched him in Michigan City, confronted him with the wiretaps and all the evidence. Scarpelli pretty much waved the white flag and gave up. At first, he had nothing to say to the agents. Then he changed his mind, and he became an informant. Even though a guy did a lot of work for the Chicago outfit, a guy was loyal. Over time, he decided to flip and cooperate. However, he actually offered to wear a wire. I mean, that's taking it to the next step. He lost a hearing, which is no surprise. A lot of these federal judges are pro-prosecution. After that hearing, he went back to the notorious MCC. Same place Frankie Schweiss was held, and he pulled an Epstein. He either was killed, like Epstein was, by Frankie Schweiss, or Scarpelli committed suicide. Again, Scarpelli was a lot bigger and stronger than Frankie Schweiss. What do you guys think, though? I want to hear from you. What do you think of Scarpelli? Do you have any stories about him you want to share? But that's my August rat of the month, Jerry Scarpelli. And sadly, he took his own life. If you guys like my Chicago mob trial stories, hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. Check out the Taylor Street Fest. And everybody have a nice day. Ciao.